Hi Seals, I hope you're enjoying the lovely warm weather outside. I hope you managed to get outside and enjoy the sun. So we're on chapter 27 and let's find out what happens. The blackness was so dense that it seemed almost like a physical object that Tilly could reach out and touch. She imagined it sneaking its way inside her nose and mouth and ears, and she started to panic. Stop, she said herself sternly. Be patient. Wait. Something usually happens at this point. Wait for the magic to kick in. She concentrated on trying to control the feeling of panic rising inside her, and told herself that in just a moment fog would billow, or the walls would fold and slide, and her bedroom or the bookshop would materialize around her. She scrunched up her eyes and stood completely still, waiting for the book-wandering magic to work. But what felt like an awfully long time in the inky blackness, Tilly was forced to come to terms with the fact that she definitely was not back at Pages & Co., and she did not seem to be in A Little Princess either. She took stock of what she could sense. She was standing on something reassuringly solid and ground-like, and she was warm. She could smell wood and paper and something sweet, but could not feel anything in her immediate arm span. She held her arms out in front of her and walked tentatively forward until she found something that felt comfortingly like a wall, not an infinite ether trapping her between stories. Okay, if this is a room, then there must be a door or a window, Tilly muttered, trying to reassure herself. Eventually her fingertips brushed against what felt encouragingly like a door frame, and as she swished her hands around, she found a cold round handle. She took a deep breath, turned and pulled it, and a door clicked open. Tilly sighed in relief. Outside was not much better, but there was a muted grey light instead of soupy darkness, and it was enough to be able to see a light switch right by the door, which Tilly turned on to reveal a very empty room. There was a small desk in one corner with a wooden chair behind it and a stack of notebooks on top. A dead plant was in one corner of the room, and there was a bin with just a rotten apple core inside it in another. Something about the smell and the feel of the place scratched at the back of Tilly's brain until it dawned on her where she was: the British Underlibrary. She edged along the corridor where most of the lights were off, apart from the occasional door outline in gold, trying to get her bearings. She quietly followed the corridor around, hoping she would be able to find Amelia Whisper's office and that Amelia would still be there before Tilly had to knock on a door at random. They were all numbered, so she hoped that meant she was already in the right corridor. But as she looked for number 42, she realized that the numbers didn't go in any recognizable pattern or order, and office 111 was next to 31, which was opposite 6. It was no help at all, and Tilly felt like she was back in Wonderland, until, with a sigh of relief, she saw number 42 with a soft glow of light leaking out from it. As Tilly went to knock, she couldn't help but notice that the next door along was Chalk's office, and it wasn't lit up. She paused with her hand in the air, about to knock on Amelia's door, before pulling it back and putting her ear against Chalk's door instead. As she leaned against it, the door clicked open and she tumbled noisily inside. "Enoch!" she heard a muffled call from the office next door. "Everything okay?" Tilly hurriedly but gently pushed the door closed and stayed as still as she could, pressing herself up against the wall of Chalk's office. She heard Amelia push her chair back and open her door, and Tilly held her breath, but a second later she heard Amelia retreating into her own office. Faced with Chalk's empty office, Tilly realized she was acting primarily on instinct rather than hard and fast clues. But she could not shake the uneasy feeling that there was more to Chalk than Grandma and Grandad had let on, or maybe more than they knew. His excuses for talking to her in Anne of Green Gables or being in Alice Wonderland were setting off alarm bells and raising red flags, and Tilly had read enough books to know not to ignore them. She switched on the desk light, which cast a dim glow and eerie shadows around the office. The room was pristine, with barely anything on the desk apart from a computer that was turned off and a shallow wire tray with a few sheets of paper in it. Tilly flicked through them and saw that they were all covered in lists of bookshops printed in tiny type. Some of them were crossed out with angry red lines, and some were marked with arrows or stars. There were no photos or knickknacks, no garish British librarian mugs, no sign of personality anywhere. The only decoration was a large poster pinned to the back of the door, titled "The Ordinances of Book Wandering." As she looked closer, she realized it was handwritten. As her eyes scanned the list, she felt increasingly nervous. These rules were devoid of the sense of adventure or wonder that seemed to fill Amelia or Seb when they talked about book wandering. 1. Travel within the Source Edition without prior permission, training, or qualifications is strictly prohibited. Tilly read. 2. Entry to the Source Library as above. 3. All book wanderers should be registered immediately after abilities manifest themselves. Otherwise, travelling will be classed as willfully illicit. 4. No book wanderer is permitted within 5 pages of the end of a novel unless trained in papers travel. The rules went on, all seeming to balance something or other. Tilly shuddered and moved over to the shelves of fat ledgers in that line the room. She noticed they were embossed in small gold letters with the dates they covered and pulled run down at random. She saw rows and rows of names in bookshops and libraries written in handwriting that changed every few years. Tilly ran her fingertips down the thick paper, down the records of so many different people and their stories, and wondered what adventures they had. She liked knowing that her mum was in one of the ledgers somewhere, and that Grandma and Grandad must be in one too. Generations of book wanderers all listed together in nearly identical emerald green ledgers. She wondered if anyone other than Chalk ever looked at them. As she put back the ledger, she realised the office was not as entirely lacking in personality as she had first thought. At the back, tucked away in a corner, was a bookcase of the sort of book you might expect to find in a librarian's office. Novels, children's books, classics, a large blue book of fairy tales, a colourful, messy mix of books. It made Tilly wonder if they'd judged Chalk too harshly after all. Could anyone with a full set of Harry Potter novels be that bad? He even had a copy of A Little Princess, and Tilly felt her heart thaw an extra degree towards him. Tilly forgot where she was for a moment and pulled down his copy. It was a different edition from her mum's, which was tucked under her arm, or any she'd ever seen before at the bookshop. The cover was a simple black mat with the title and the author's name in gold writing. She flicked through the first few chapters, unable to resist reading the description of her father again. But she was instantly distracted by the scene in which Captain Crewe and Sarah first leave the school, which was not quite how she remembered it. She was sure she hadn't seen their cab swerve in the road to avoid hitting someone, but she was also learning that once you were inside a book, anything was possible. But then she found another passage that she was sure was different in her mum's copy. She read it aloud under her breath to herself. She went into the shop. It was warm and smelled deliciously. A young woman wrapped in a warm cloak stood at the counter, absent-mindedly playing with her necklace as she waited for the baker to finish setting up the piping hot buns. "Good morning, miss. How are the children doing in this cold weather?" "Quite well, thank you, Nancy. They're all very excited about Christmas." The baker smiled warmly. "What can I get you then? Anything for the little ones?" "A loaf of bread and some of those tiny almond cakes, please. There are several sweet teeth back at the house." The goods were wrapped up neatly in wax paper, and the woman left the bakery in a gust of cold air as the door closed. The woman behind the counter noticed Sarah shivering in her thin dress. "Sorry about that." "If you please," said Sarah, "have you lost fourpence? A silver fourpence?" Tilly slid the book back onto the shelf and put her own on Chalk's desk to check, confused by the differences. Perhaps she was misremembering the scene. Was her mum's copy special somehow? But before she could turn up the right page in her book to check, the door handle started to turn. She froze. There was nowhere to hide, and all she had time to do was shove her mum's copy of the book into her pinafore dress. Thankful it had large pockets, before the door was flung open to reveal Enoch Chalk silhouetted in the hazy grey light, looking furious. "Come here, girl," he snarled. "I knew there was something strange about the moment I first saw you." Tilly backed into the corner. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Chalk," she stammered. "I got lost and I couldn't work out how to get home and your door was open and I—" "Enough!" he interrupted. "No excuses. How did you get here, Miss Pages?" "Like I said, I was lost in the library and your door was—" "No," he said, tense with anger. "We will get to why you were in my office in good time. I want to know how you've come to be in the underlibrary past closing hours and by yourself." He spun round. "Is your grandfather here too?" No, I didn't mean to come here," Tilly protested. "I promise it was an accident. I was trying to get out of a book, but the page was torn and—" "What on earth is going on here?" Tilly was faint with relief when she saw Amelia whisper, join Chalk at the door. "I thought you had gone home, Enoch. Why are you out in the corridor bellowing?" Amelia tailed off as she caught sight of Tilly. Matilda, what on earth are you doing back here? Okay, so let's see. Let's hope Amelia's as nice as she is and she helps Tilly. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. Hopefully see you soon. It's half term tomorrow. From tomorrow, it's Friday tomorrow. So one more day, then half term. And yeah, hope you're okay and hopefully I'll see you soon. Bye.